Excited to welcome back to the program, host of the Thom Hartmann program and author of a great many books, the latest, The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream. Thom Hartmann, welcome to the Damage Report.
John, it's great to be back with you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back on. I've been trying to do a little bit of writing during the pandemic, but I'm not putting out books nearly at the rate that you are. So, we've broken down a few of your past books on the program. This is obviously an incredibly important one. What made you choose to turn to the topic of monopolies and the history of those?
Well, when I first suggested to BK, the publisher of Barrett Kohler, the publisher of these books back, I don't know, a couple of years ago, that we do a series of relatively small books that could be read in a weekend or even in a day if somebody really wanted to commit some time to it. They're about half or a third the length of a normal book, and the suggestion was, let's pick a whole series of topics, and when we're all done, the books can be put side to side, and you'd have basically a history of America in a whole bunch of different areas. And we wanted to pick out the things that we thought were having the greatest and most consequential impact on the quality of life in our country. So we started with guns and the Second Amendment. From there, we went to the United States Supreme Court and the ways that they have basically been screwing America aggressively since the 1970s, and what can be done about it. And then from there, we wrote this last book about which you and I talked about the hidden history of the Republican war on voting, and we're living that right now. And then monopolies. The average American family is paying about $5,000 a year, every year, in what I call a monopoly tax. It's not actually a tax, it's higher prices that we're paying because of monopolies. Internet, for example, and most developed countries offer high quality, high speed internet, typically 1 gigabyte up and down. South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, most of Europe, for $20 to $35 a month. Here in the United States, it costs more than twice that, and the quality sucks. Why? Because we have basically a small handful of companies that control the internet. Wow. For our country. That's just one small example. You add up all these examples, from pharmaceuticals to hospitals to the food services to hotel. I mean, pick an industry. They're all monopolized. Airlines, and the average American family is paying $5,000 a year more than they should, just because of this monopoly situation in America.
That is absolutely amazing. A significant chunk of their entire income. It's a great example you provide. I mean, my internet is at least 5 times that average that you talked about. That's hugely consequential. And of course, I wanted us to focus on, we have to talk about the history of this, how we got to this place, how monopolies interact with and influence governments. But for a lot of people, I think it might be very easy to think of monopolies as a thing of a past time in America. Surely that's not something that we need to deal with. But I would say even, in the time that you're writing this book, I mean, there have to be a lot of new concerns about certain sorts of monopolies developing in the tech industry, social media. We have a lot of conversations as a country about those sorts of things. So what are some more of the ways that monopolies influence outcomes for American consumers and workers?
Well, first off, as companies get bigger and bigger and gain more and more dominance over their industries, in addition to size and wealth, along with that size and wealth comes political power. An airline as large as United or American can easily buy hundreds of members of Congress with basically their entertainment budget, with chump change, and for example, and do so in any state in the union as well. So number one, our entire political process has been corrupted by these monopolies, whether it's the Facebook monopoly or whether it's the airline oligopoly. Most industries, it's not a true monopoly, it's an oligopoly. That is to say, it's 2 to 5 companies that control more than 80% of the industry, all the economic activity. And they function as a monopoly, though. If United raises their prices $10, within 5 minutes, Delta will have raised its prices $10 on the same routes. They all monitor each other, so they functionally work together as a monopoly. So this is one of the big problems. Back in the 60s, in the early 60s, and talk to somebody my age who will enthusiastically tell you about this. There was this really cool TV show in the late 50s, early 60s called Route 66. And Martin Milner and George Maharis were driving this Corvette from basically New York to Los Angeles. This was before the Eisenhower interstate highway system was completed. And the only way to get from coast to coast was on Route 66, which most of it was a 2-lane road all the way across America that went through all these thousands of little towns. And every week they'd be in another little town, and they'd have an adventure, and you could always tell where they were. If they were in Biloxi, Mississippi, there was the Biloxi Diner and the Biloxi Bank and the Biloxi Hotel, and they were all locally owned businesses, and Jacobson's Furniture and Sam's Dry Cleaners and businesses that have been passed down in families for generations. All of that is gone. If you were to drop out of an airplane from 60,000 feet and just land in any random part of America today, you would have no friggin' idea where you are, because it's the same Olive Garden and Holiday Inn and Marriott and McDonald's and Wells Fargo or Bank of America. And the result of this isn't just the homogenization of America's business culture. I mean, that's bad enough. But that's more of an aesthetic concern. The real concern is that it's no longer possible, or at least as easy as it was prior to the Reagan era, prior to the 1980s when all this changed. It's no longer possible to start a small business. It's no longer possible to hang on to a small business. It's no longer possible to have a family business. You can't compete with giant companies. When Walmart moves into a neighborhood, they wipe out on average 140 local businesses. And those local businesses, and it's not just Walmart, obviously, and those local businesses are just being devastated. And then of course, now we've got COVID on top, putting this on steroids. So we need to be breaking up these big companies, and we need to go back to enforcing the laws that were passed in the 1880s to stop this from happening, in order to basically restore vibrancy and health to our economic system, to our economic landscape.
I guess this is sort of one of the natural troubles potentially of writing history books that are deeply tied into what's going on right now. That you talked about the war on voting, and now you have, you could do an entire book on the last 6 months leading up to this election. In the same way, when you talk about monopolies, you mentioned that obviously that's interacting with the pandemic. People can't go to the vast majority of places that are selling products. And I would imagine that many people are probably relying on things like Target and ordering things from Amazon. Do you think is that a temporary thing? Do we, in a year, will we be basically back to the position we were in? Or is this just going to, throw gasoline on the sort of thing that you're talking about?
It already has. There are different estimates being offered by different people, but the general consensus seems to be that at least a quarter of the small and medium-sized businesses that have been shuttered since March will never return. And of course the big businesses, the giant monopolistic corporations, they've all been bailed out. They've gotten trillions of dollars, out of Congress, and now they're getting it out of the Fed. The Fed has created out of thin air $7 trillion, 1/3 of the entire country's GDP, and they're using it to buy corporate bonds. In other words, to loan corporations money at basically no interest, and to buy stock to support the stock market. And I'm concerned, frankly, that if Joe Biden wins the election, the day that that's announced, the head of the Fed, Lewis Powell, who is the first Fed chair in a long time, who's not an economist. He's actually a former managing director of the Carlyle Group, the big banking group that in some defense companies. That's how he became a multi-millionaire. And his BA is in politics, not economics. His college degree. And I'm concerned that the day that Joe Biden gets announced as the winner of the election, Powell will say, okay, that's it. We're no longer going to buy stocks and bonds, which, by the way, the Fed has never done in its history. And there's a whole body of law out there suggesting it's a crime what he is doing, that it goes way beyond their legal purview. That he'll just say, that's it. We're no longer, we're going to take our $7 trillion and go home, and the market will immediately crash. And everybody will say, oh, it's because the Democrats got elected. Get ready.
No, well, surely the media will make sure that people understand what really happened. Anyway, that's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so what you're talking about is obviously scary. Some of it, obviously, we get an idea of the consolidation of these companies and things like that. But the idea that on top of everything else bad that's going on in 2020, that might be accelerating that trend is certainly scary. So Is this an inevitability? Are we moving every day? We move another step towards a cyberpunk future of corporations that not only control all trade but government as well, or are there reasons to believe potentially in the experience of other countries that this is not necessarily a one-way street that we're traveling down?
We are the only developed country in the world that does not enforce anti-monopoly laws. In fact, most of the pressure for Facebook, for example, to break up or divest itself of things like Instagram is coming from Europe. And the big challenges to Google and Amazon are coming out of Europe. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen in America as we go into the future is anybody's guess. Historically, though, you look at the eruptions of anti-monopoly furor or fervor or both. One was in the 1890s in response to John Rockefeller. That was the Sherman Antitrust Act. The Clayton Antitrust Act was in the 1930s. Again, in response to the big, actually the banking, steel, and oil monopolies were reforming. And then in the 1950s, the Antitrust Act of, I think it was 1956. And in 1982 or 83, Ronald Reagan ordered the Justice Department, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Commerce Department to stop enforcing those three laws. And so, and nobody has turned them back on yet, but they're still on the books. And so I think at a certain point, Americans are going to say, okay, we're tired of being screwed. We're tired of being, screwed. I don't know how to say it other than so bring it back. And I'm seeing that. I'm seeing more and more books coming out about this. I'm seeing more and more articles. I think if we have a Democratic administration and an overwhelming number of Democrats in the House and Senate at the federal level, you're going to start seeing action on this. It really is the thing that has most damaged workers' ability to have any say in the workplace. The quality of life for consumers, the ability. I mean, we pay more than twice for drugs what any other country in any other developed country in the world does. For example, it's because of the drug monopolies. So I mean, people are starting to figure it out.
I certainly hope so, because you've done a great job of demonstrating how consequential this is. I mean, I was talking with a friend of mine about, I'm personally very interested in history, and unfortunately, a lot of history can feel very divorced from what we're experiencing. But I think that one of the great things about your series is that it is entirely connected to what's going on, and many of the challenges that your history fleshes out are challenges that we are still currently facing. So hopefully people will take a look and learn quite a bit about where we might go from here. The book is The Hidden History of Monopolies: How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream. Thom Hartmann, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, John. Thanks so much for having me on.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.